Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway, joined by Mary Katharine Ham. She of Getting Hammered fame. She is also a grits girl. I learned by listening to Getting Hammered this week that you are a grits connoisseur. Mary Katharine, here we must divide. I do not believe grits ought to be on any menu in the United States, period, ever. When did this even get into the United States food supply? Don't we think Secretary Kennedy can get it out?
This is authoritarian nonsense, Hugh. The grits are delicious. Why would you not want to eat them? Is it a texture thing? It's just
the first time Jill Eastland tried to give me grits and they came right out. I said, why don't I just go out and get some gravel on the driveway and chew that? But I will move on. Grits, there's a reason grits is only in the South. Because after the Civil War, there was nothing else to eat in the South, and so you ate grits. I do not know how it travels, though. Mary Katharine, you didn't have a roommate as a freshman at the University of Georgia?
No, I did. I had a roommate.
Oh, I misunderstood the podcast then. I thought you were saying that you were a gym rat because you didn't have any friends in Georgia.
No, I didn't have any friends, but I did have a roommate, and my roommate was actually very nice, but we were not interested in the same things. So, such that I had friends, she was my buddy, but it was like, by force. I didn't have any organic friendships at that time. She was very nice to me, though.
Were you a sorority girl at Georgia?
I was not. I was actually very confused when I got to the University of Georgia and did not get there in time for Rush, but got there for the end of Rush and saw women weeping in the elevators about where they did or did not match. And I was so confused by this because I had not been introduced to Greek culture at all at that point in my life.
Are you glad that you missed out on it?
I mean, I just didn't have any money, so that wasn't a possibility for me.
Well, you were working.
Work a job.
You were working.
Yeah.
You were delivering newspapers. I remember that part. Now I want to move to the Catholic conversation you had with Vic. Although first I want to bring up the fact I've never ever heard of anyone going to a sunrise service at a Baptist church and not bringing a hot dish. You really did freeload through that.
I did. You know what? And Christ forgives me, and so does the Baptist church. So we made it.
Did the girls get their fill of donuts?
Oh my gosh. I had to throw a cap on what we were doing at the Baptist buffet, given that especially I had not brought anything with me. So
I found that very amusing. Now I want to talk to you about the Pope, because you and Vic went on a little frolic and detour about the Pope. You didn't bring up the fact, and may he rest in peace, Francis, but he hated America. You know that, right? He really didn't like us.
Well, he also hated capitalism. Like I'm not a huge fan of his ideological bent for sure. I try to be respectful about him, but not a huge fan of that stuff.
So do you think the next one is going to be a correction from that or a progress down the anti-American, anti-free market path?
Look, I do think there has been a global vibe shift, and but that does not necessarily mean that the Cardinals obey the vibe shift, right? However, there's two sides of this, because I know there's truth to the fact that Francis as Pope, you can sort of stock the Cardinal lineup with your own people and your allies. I think it would serve the world better if there was someone a little more neutral and less negative about capitalism in America. But I'm not a voting party, nor am I Catholic, despite my name, which really throws people off.
It does throw people off because it does sound very Catholic. Now let's talk about the Catholics at the court today. You and Vic talked about last week's blockbuster Supreme Court case about whether Montgomery County is indeed as crazy as it sounds. And your conclusion was, yes, it is as crazy as it sounds. Today, they've been arguing about whether or not Oklahoma can do a public charter school run by the Catholics. And apparently, the Attorney General of Oklahoma was worried about the Muslims and the Jews running their own schools. Mary Katharine, do you worry about private charter schools or public charter schools that are run by religious organizations? I don't.
I don't, because I've had very good experiences with religious schools, and many parents in this country, even non-religious ones, choose to send their children to religious schools because, in general, what you get from a religious school is what was normal in a public school in the 1980s and 90s. And that's what people actually want. I actually signed my kids up for more than I ever thought I would, specifically, explicitly religious activities, because those default to normal versus secular activities, which end up becoming swallowed up by the left. So for that reason, I think many non-religious folks would be happy to welcome religious schools into the fold. And by the way, those religious schools, the only thing I'd worry about is that the public part of it would make the religious schools less successful because they'd be bogged down by the public requirements.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about is that they'd be run by Jesuits and therefore they wouldn't be Catholic. And they were being advertised as Catholic, and they wouldn't be Catholic if they were run by Jesuits, sort of like Vic's Georgetown experience. Now I've got to turn to the pressing matter of cafeteria ladies. You had a very nice cafeteria lady. Vic apparently had a prison guard. I'm just curious if cafeteria ladies have changed over the decades. We didn't have them in my Catholic school because we didn't have a cafeteria. You brought a brown bag. But do you think they've changed, the people who work in cafeterias now?
I haven't visited in a while, but my kids, actually during COVID, a lot of small schools lost their cafeterias because a lot of the smaller vendors who survived by getting big contracts from large school districts didn't have those contracts anymore because they closed the schools for 18 months. So a lot of those little niche industries didn't get put back in. So my kids don't have a cafeteria anymore. They used to. And the lady who ran it was very, very sweet. And she retired. But there will never be anyone as sweet as Miss Regina, who helped me when I was 5 years old to find my kindergarten class.
I personally think, I hope Miss Regina has many years left on this planet. She might be still with us. Do you know?
I do not know, but I hope she is. And if not, she is with the angels for sure, because she was an angel here.
Now, the ladies at Harvard were not particularly nice, and they couldn't cook. I believe it has changed dramatically at colleges now that you've actually got to produce edible fare. Is that your understanding?
Oh, I had fantastic food at the University of Georgia. Now, there were grits on the menu, but you could have other things. And I would argue that a cafeteria run by Southern ladies is probably a pretty good bet for fantastic food. And that is what we had at the University of Georgia and most of my elementary schools.
Well, did you follow the argument today at the court? Have you read up on this? Do you think that the Chief Justice, who went one hand, other hand, do you think he'll come down on behalf of private charter schools, public charter schools that are Catholic?
I have not listened to the argument, so you would know better than I, but I always hope that Roberts ends up on the right side of the issue, and I would not be able to predict this time around with this little information as of yet.
He has been right thus far on every free exercise case. Every one, he's been right on it. Mary Katharine, always a pleasure. Go listen to Getting Hammered for the complete rundown on Miss Regina, Southern Girls, working out as a gym rat as a freshman, and some serious stuff about Pope Francis at Getting Hammered, available on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you find podcasts.